Moderator for tonight, Tom Conley. So Tom, take it away. Yes, great crowd. I'd like to welcome everyone, and in particular our 7 candidates. The Arlington County Democratic Committee is very pleased to be hosting the last of what we know has been a grueling series of debates for you all. All of us here know how hard campaigning is, particularly in the primary. And this campaign has been long and tough. We've had some losses, as well as other casualties that they'll go through that. So let me introduce our candidates in the order in which they're going to give their opening remarks tonight. Patrick Hope, Laverne Chapman, Mark Levine, Derek Ira, Adam Evan, Bill Ewell, and Don Martin. We've got what we think is a really interesting format tonight. All the questions will be posed by the candidates themselves. And those questions will be posed only to the other candidates. A candidate will not get the chance to answer their own question. So let me quickly go over the rules. Each candidate will get to make a 1-minute opening statement and a 1-minute closing statement. The order in which they will give those opening and closing statements has been chosen in agreement. It's this order here. We drew some cards before the debate began. And the closing statements will go in the same order as the opening statement. So the person giving the last closing, well, the last opening, will have the last word of the debate. After the opening, we'll go to the candidate questions. All of the questions have been submitted privately to me, and those questions have not been disclosed to the other candidates or anyone else. I've chosen the order of those questions randomly. In the first round, the question will be the one posed by Mayor Ewell. The other candidates will then each have 90 seconds to give their answer to Mayor Ewell's question. We'll move on to another candidate's question in the next round, and we'll shift the order of responses with each question. Based on my admittedly weak arithmetic, that would put us at about 9 to 10 minutes per round, 7 rounds, plus roughly 15 minutes of opening and closing. We should be done in about an hour and a half. To ensure we stay on track, we have a celebrity timer, none other than esteemed 8th District Democratic Committee Chair Margot Horner. 30-second warning, and then the time's up sign. They're very discreet, so it may be hard to see them. And we're going to be very rigorous about enforcing the time limits. We've got 7 candidates here. We've got a limited time. And so I would ask the candidates to please be considerate of each other and the audience on the time limits. And then importantly, I would likewise ask all of the audience members to be respectful of each other and of each of the candidates, and refrain from applause or other disruption during the remarks of any candidate. All right? We all want to hear from all the candidates, and if you're applauding or interrupting one of the candidates' remarks, you're just cutting into your candidate's time, and if you're being disruptive, we're going to have to ask you to stop. We're all eager to hear from all the candidates. So we want everyone's cooperation to keep this moving and to make this the kind of debate we all want. So with that, let's get ready to rumble. I'd like to call up on our first candidate, Delegate Patrick Hope. Probably best if you stay at the seats for just one minute.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Delegate Patrick Hope. I'm a delegate at the General Assembly. I represent part of Arlington County. I want to thank Kip Malinowski and Tom Conley for moderating tonight, and my hometown, Arlington County Democratic Committee, for hosting this evening. But thank you all for being here. You know, debate after debate, there's been very little differences between the 7 candidates that are standing before you. We've debated climate change, we've debated Affordable Care Act, immigration reform, gun safety. But the difference for me in this campaign is my steadfast commitment to helping the pursuit of the most vulnerable amongst us, to be their voice. You know, this is a very wealthy district. but we have about 85,000 people in the 8th district that have no insurance. We have a high rate of people that are living paycheck to paycheck. A zip code should not determine the educational, health, and economic outcomes. I look forward to your questions.
As a woman and an African American, I've been able to live and realize the American dream because of educational and economic opportunities in this district. My parents migrated here from farms. They got good blue-collar jobs, lived in subsidized housing, raised 5 kids, but attained economic stability. I received a great public school education, first in my family to graduate from college. My late husband had the opportunity to open a company here for 17 years, employing over 400 people. We sold it in '93 and started a foundation to do philanthropic work to strengthen this community. I want everyone in future generations to have those same educational and economic opportunities to realize their American dream. My strong community leadership, empowering people, and getting things done is what I will bring to Congress. I will fight for you. I look forward to your questions.
Sure.
My name is Mark. Sorry. Can you hear me now? Thank you. Oh, there we go.
My name is Mark Levine. On my first day working for Congressman Barney Frank, he told us that if we have a choice between meeting with a bank lobbyist and meeting with a homeless immigrant with AIDS, we have to meet with the immigrant. Because he said the bank lobbyist already has plenty of friends on Capitol Hill. As I look out in Congress, I see a Congress bought and paid for by wealthy interests who use their lobbyists to make them wealthier and more powerful. The foreign car dealers have lobbyists like Don Beyer. The healthcare providers have lobbyists like Patrick Hope. I'm not against talking to them, but these aren't the people who keep me awake at night. The people who keep me awake at night are people who are struggling day to day, struggling to get by, people who are falling farther behind. Those are the people that I want to fight for, just as Barney Frank fought for, just as Elizabeth Warren fights for. You know, I know that Congress is full of pay-to-play, big-money politics. It's just not my DNA. If I'm in office, I want you to come visit me, and you can leave your lobbyists behind. Thank you.
All right, my name is Derek Hyra, and I want to thank Kip and Tom for hosting us tonight. I'm a professor, I am a community leader, but more importantly, I'm a father. And I'm running to restore trust in the American government and restore the American dream. Now, how are we going to do this? We're going to do it by building an economy for us all. We have to stabilize the housing market, we have to grow the middle class, and we have to reduce our income inequality. Now, there are 7 candidates before you, but I am the only one with a substantial housing market background, and my main goal as your next congressman will be to stabilize the housing market, which is 20% of our national economy. If we stabilize the housing market, we will build a robust economy going forward. So I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you and all the candidates in our last debate, and I'm going to earn your vote on June 10th. Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Kip. I am Adam Evan, and I'm different. I've known I was different since I was 5 years old, and the other kids chanted at me. They chanted, Nixon, Nixon, Nixon. And I chanted back, Humphrey, Humphrey, Humphrey. And I'm different in a lot of other ways. I'm the only one up here who's represented Arlington, Alexandria, and Fairfax for more than 10 years. I'm the only one up here who has successfully expanded Medicaid in Virginia to provide prenatal care for immigrant moms. The only one up here to provide insurance access for LGBT couples. The only one up here to expand access for solar energy. The only one to write a bill to combat Ken Cuccinelli and his radical agenda. I'm the only person up here who's going to call himself unabashedly a liberal tonight. I'm not the loudest, I'm not the flashiest. I won't make you the loftiest promises, but I'm an effective legislator who shares your values, and that's why I'm running for Congress.
There you go.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming out. My name is Bill Ewell. I serve as the mayor of the historic city of Alexandria, Virginia, and I've been involved in politics and community service for more than 35 years. I was raised by a single mom in public housing. It was the first my family had the opportunity to go off to college, get an education, come back to Alexandria, become gainfully employed, and the rest is history. My life is about overcoming the odds and helping everybody to rise to a successful level. I'm running for Congress simply because I believe that Congress is broken, and it's time that we have people there with leadership skills and experience that can help rebuild it and make it better. I spent yesterday on Capitol Hill for 2.5 hours in a session dealing with the 60th anniversary of Brown versus the Board of Education. And believe me, as someone who served for 10 years on the public school board in Alexandria, I know that we need to make improvements in our public school system. And yesterday was a testament by being on the Hill, listening to 5 congressmen speak, and then hear a panel of folks speak, said to me, I need to be there to help make things better. So I ask for your vote, and I look forward to your questions.
It's good to be with all of you this evening, and welcome back, Patrick. I knew it would take more than a broken rib to keep you from this community. From birth, I was taught to fight for the poor, for workers, for those who suffer from discrimination and hatred. I was taught to try to arrest any problem before us, to be a change agent, to be a leader. I will fight to raise the minimum wage. I will fight to lift our children and our families out of poverty. I will always protect a woman's right to choose. I'll be the greatest advocate for climate change that I can be. I will take on the NRA to keep guns out of the hands of our most dangerous. And I will celebrate all that Obamacare has already done and work to make it better. All campaigns are about differences. Lieutenant Governor, job creator, ambassador, and nonprofit leader, and by the way, never a lobbyist. This is what I offer: proven experience, tested leadership, and a lifelong commitment to serving others. Thank you.
All right, well, let's get to the candidate questions. The first candidate question will be from Mayor Ewell. And the first question will go to Ms. Chapman, and to Mr. Levine, and to Mr. Ira, et cetera. And then we'll go down the line with each question. Now again, Mayor Ewell will not be able to answer his own question. He can obviously address the subject matter of it in his closing remarks, but he won't be given a 90-second period with his own question. On timer, you ready? Okay. So the first question, going to Ms. Chapman and then to the rest of the candidates, is from Mayor Ewell. The 8th district is one of the most important districts in America, with its proximity to the nation's capital, diversity, and home to many federal and military employees. What experience do you have dealing with the magnitude of issues in the district? Homeland security, public safety, affordable housing, infrastructure, employee relations, transportation, environment, and education. 90 seconds go.
Thank you for that question, Bill. Being from a daughter of a 30-year postal employee, I surely understand what federal workers have to go through. I was the go-to person when Jim Moran needed to pull together small businesses, women-owned businesses, minority businesses, to come up with some solutions for their economic viability after the government shut down. So he came to me because he knew through my 10 years with the Urban League that I've been dealing with affordable housing, dealing with foreclosure counseling to keep people in their homes. So a lot of the ills that we see around the district, I was in the trenches making sure young people got scholarships to go to school, making sure that schools were trying to eliminate the achievement gap, making sure that transportation plans are being considered before you put buildings up, because they do affect the citizens in the community. Talking to citizens about, yes, it's fine to have the silver line, but what about a yellow line going down the Route 1 corridor? So I have born and raised in the district, lived my life in the district, dealing with the underserved people in the district on all kinds of social, civil, and economic issues.
So my experience is working in the federal government, in Congress, as the chief. No problem. So my experience is working in the federal government. I was Chief Legislative Counsel for Congressman Barney Frank. In fact, I worked on Homeland Security matters, and my very first radio show was exposing the Bush administration for basically doing an end run around the committee overseeing Homeland Security and doing a secret off-the-shelf executive order, which I exposed in my first radio show. Federal workers, I've been defending federal workers on national TV for at least 5 years, locally for 10 years. And I think that's important because people in this district know how patriotic and hardworking federal workers, contractors, veterans are. They don't necessarily get it in Idaho and Texas, and that's why I've gone on the air nationally to explain those things because, frankly, I want more than one vote in Congress. I want to persuade others to convince their members of Congress to also vote for our interests. On infrastructure, I've been on CNBC arguing that we need a second stimulus package, arguing that this is the time to spend when interest rates are low, when unemployment is high. This is the time we need to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. On the environment, I have the endorsement of Michael Mann, noted climatologist, who thinks that one of the reasons that I do the best on climate change is not necessarily because we have great differences on the issue, but because I've been in a national forum arguing and convincing people who need some convincing on the other side that climate change is real and extremely dangerous. On education, many of you know about my creative education plan, which doesn't cost a penny, which is why Republicans will support it, but would dramatically reduce college costs. So I've worked in Congress, I've drafted legislation, I've negotiated with Republicans, I've worked with Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden on all of these issues.
Before I became a professor, I worked for the federal government for 4 years. I worked for the Treasury Department, and I also worked for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's funny, I lived 10 miles outside of the district, but it didn't matter if I drove, took the bus, or took the train, or the metro. It took 45 minutes, so hopefully we could reduce the time that it takes to get in to DC. But keeping and making sure that federal government employees get their step increases, their COLA increases is critical. In terms of federal contracting, we have tons of federal contractors in this district. My wife is a federal contractor, so I will make sure that I fight to make sure that R&D research remains in this area. It is critical to the economy, and so we have to make sure with sequestration and budget cuts, we do not cut R&D for the 8th Congressional District. On affordable housing, I would say, I know Mayor Yule has worked really hard on this, but I have worked probably just as hard. He's worked longer, but I was the chair of the Alexandria Housing Authority. In this area, in Alexandria and Arlington, since 2000, we have lost 26,000 units of affordable housing. It is a major problem. We need to develop mixed income communities. We've got to reform the low income housing tax credit so we can get those units built here. And we have to keep this area diverse. The diversity in this area is its core strength.
Senator Wright.
Well, thank you for the question. It's a long one. Now, I'm going to go through some of the issues you mentioned, Bill. Regarding transportation, I sponsored legislation to provide for over $3 billion in capital improvements for Metro. That was a partnership of $1.5 billion over 10 years from the federal government, $1.5 billion from Virginia, Maryland, and DC. I want to protect that partnership on the other end in Congress. On education, I'm proud to have played a role in co-sponsoring the largest bond issue for education in Virginia history, as well as serving on an education committee for 8 years. I don't know if anyone else on this panel has done that. Regarding infrastructure, I also served on the Joint Committee on Transportation Accountability, where I came well to know about the inferior structure of so many bridges in this country and the need for reauthorizing the Highway Trust Fund. Further, as a member of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, I've been active in seeking to provide for the infrastructure of this region, including generators so the Orange Line won't be an orange crush. And for federal workers, I support very much the restoration of the Metro Match. I personally discussed this with Congressman Miranda Link. I support restoring the, reducing the backlog of federal workers who are retiring and getting their benefits. I've spoken to workers about that. I served on the Metropolitan Washington Air Quality Committee, so I'm well aware and worked on the magnitude of the issues of climate change that we face in this region. Look forward to having an opportunity in Congress to address it on a much bigger scale.
Thank you. Senator Biden.
I want to compliment Bill for an excellent question. Fully appropriate from the mayor of Alexandria. But I am not a mayor. Instead, I bring, I think, a different kind of experienced this. And my grandparents, 3 of the 4 were New Dealers. That's how we came to Northern Virginia. And my grandchildren are 5th generation Northern Virginia. I'm very proud I have Clara and Grace, my 2 daughters, with me here tonight. So I've been in business here in Northern Virginia for 40 years. We've created 4 businesses from scratch, created 335 jobs, and I've been deeply involved in the community for a long, long time. I served on the Commonwealth Transportation Board some years ago for 39 months. I did represent Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax in the General Assembly for 8 years as Lieutenant Governor. And there I led Commission on Poverty and for Virginians living in the lowest income levels. I led a commission for 8 years on Virginians with disabilities, with really landmark changes in the way they could live independently. I led a commission on child sexual assault and another on the economic recovery. I was overseas for 4 years as ambassador, bringing a degree of foreign policy expertise and understanding of this. And I've led many nonprofits here, from DC Teen Pregnancy, High School Dropout Prevention in Arlington and Alexandria and Fairfax, and Joe Gibbs Youth Home. It's a wide variety of different experience that I intend to bring to help the problems of the 8th District and of America. There you go.
Before I was elected to the House in 2009, I was a community leader right here in Arlington County, and I co-chaired the 10-year plan in Arlington for affordable housing. And then we created many new units for supportive housing for people in homelessness. I also chair the Community Services Board, which oversees all the policies and programs for people with mental health and substance abuse and intellectual disabilities. And it was through that we've been able to work on regional funding to get more funding for people so they can live a life like everyone else in this room. As a legislator, I supported the transportation law that put in over $1 billion a year, a store transportation law that also going to complete our Silver Line. In education, I've always supported, especially as chair of the Progressive Caucus, more funding for our public schools and fight against budgets that defund our public schools. In healthcare, I was the only House Democrat that Governor McDonnell appointed to the Virginia Health Reform Initiative, which was appointed to try to implement the Affordable Care Act in the state of Virginia. I was part of, through the budget, of expanding Medicaid for waivers for people with disabilities. I brought in regional money through the budget for people with disabilities. I mean, it's a great question. There's a lot that I've done, but let me tell you something. As your next member of Congress, there will not be a stronger fighter for people for federal employees and for people with disabilities as your next member of Congress. And I think that it's very important to fill those shoes that Jim Moran has put forward.
Thank you. We will now go to the next question, which comes from Senator Evan. And we'll go first to Mr. Levine, then Professor Hira, then to Mayor Ewell, etc. And the question is, have you ever taken a position politically and then changed that position? If so, elaborate.
I'm trying to think. I've taken a position politically and then changed that position. I think I've been pretty consistent, and I've done thousands of radio shows and hundreds of TV shows, and I think I've been pretty consistent. I think about my values very clearly before I take a position. And I'm trying to think when I was persuaded something different. Sometimes I don't know. I don't know if I've done that, if I've changed my position on something. I'd have to think about it. Like I said, I value consistency. I think consistency is very important. So I guess I have nothing more to add.
Professor Hire.
Have you ever taken work? Okay, we got it going. Well, most of my life I was an independent. And when I came to Alexandria, I joined the Democratic Party, but I always voted Democratic my entire life. And I had been pretty anti-Republican. And I studied urban policy, and I am somebody who wants pragmatic approaches that help people, regardless if they're lofted by the Republicans or the Democrats. And I will say that in my studies, I looked at the Family Assistance Plan. That was under Nixon, and that was something that tried to give money to low-income people to allow them to control their own lives, instead of having to go through the bureaucracies of city machines. So that was something that I thought might help poor people. It was actually lofted by the Republicans. Both Democrats and Republicans in the 70s killed the bill. But I have learned that you shouldn't care whether it's Democrat or Republican. You should care about proper, pragmatic policies that are going to help Americans.
Mayor Yule.
First of all, let me say that to my question regarding regional, the question about your experience dealing with all those issues, I just wanted to find out how many among the candidates, whether or not they had an opportunity or experience like I have in terms of all the regional issues. I have been serving on the Metropolitan Transit Board of Directors for 13 years, dealing with transit, transportation, economic development. I've been 11 years on the Metropolitan Council of Governments, dealing with all of those topics that I asked in my question. And so I feel proud of the fact that I have the qualification experience to serve as your next congressperson, because I have that experience and none of the others do. And with regards to the question at hand, have I ever taken a position and changed? The answer is no. I'm about the business of first listening to people, secondly being a team player, thirdly a consensus builder, and fourth, I'm very committed to implementing and making things happen. I have a track record of performance in getting things done, such as signing the Mayor's Illegal Guns Initiative. I was one of the first mayors to do that. Marriage Equality Act supported that. Affordable housing programs in Alexandria. We built a brand new fire station, 64 affordable housing units above a fire station in Potomac Yard, and a strong advocate for transportation and transit to address our economic development needs.
My answer is yes. I think I'm smarter now. And I value consistency, but I value even more growth and wisdom. You know, in 1992, some young man named Adam Evan was the founder of the Virginia Partisans, one of the first gay and lesbian clubs in Virginia. I was lieutenant governor, and he came to me with questionnaires, and he wanted to know where I stood on gay rights. And I think I was mostly good. I was absolutely against discrimination in housing, discrimination in employment. I remember the debates on the Virginia Senate floor about including gays in hate crime legislation, which the Republicans defeated, led by Mark Earley, and wishing that I could do the tie vote to include gays and lesbians in the hate crime legislation. But I also said on those questionnaires with Adam back in 1995, 96, that I didn't think gay marriage was feasible or practical, and I wasn't for it. I was wrong. And as things came on in 2002, 2003, I signed up with Howard Dean, who was the first governor to sign civil marriage and gay marriage in the country. By 2006, when there was a constitutional amendment in Virginia to ban it, I was among the largest givers, personal ones, to try to defeat that. And I want to say now that I am a very strong believer in marriage equality, and I would like to thank Adam Evan for leading me on this journey.
My first year in office, we got a lot of bills having to do with tax credits. And I voted for some of these tax credits, but we've noticed that the JLARC has done a study showing us that a lot of these tax credits don't give us the benefit that we thought that they would give us. And so now I've routinely changed my mind on tax credits. I'll give you another issue too. Mandatory minimums. My first year in courts committee, I voted for a lot of these mandatory minimums and some of the most heinous crimes you could possibly think of. But now after my first year, I realized in picking a lot of judges that we ought to pick judges to give them the judicial discretion on what types of sentences we should constrict judges in order to do that. I will say to you, Don, I'm disappointed in your answer. I was hoping you'd say it's welfare reform was something that you changed your mind on. Because so many people have been impacted by welfare reform, especially women and children. I'd like you to say that that was a bad idea. I thought it was bad at the time, and I think it's a bad idea now. And I was hoping that you would say that. And I hope you do reconsider that as being your crowning achievement, because there's been a lot of people hurt by welfare reform. We didn't put the funding mechanisms in place, and it hasn't been effective. It hasn't done what we thought it would do. And I think that's the difference between you and I, is that we're different kinds of Democrats. I would never support welfare reform, and I'm disappointed that you didn't use that as your answer.
I have not had to take a political stance, but on a personal level, there is an issue that I would say I'm evolving with. Medical marijuana I was one growing up, you say no to drugs, against all drugs, and then in '97, my husband was dying of lung cancer, and there was a pill that he would have to take just to get an appetite, and that pill cost $90. He had to take it 3 times a day, and I started doing research and looking at families who couldn't afford a pill of $90 a day, and the recommendation that I was getting through the research was around medical marijuana. So I would say that my stance on decriminalizing marijuana is a definite. I think that there are young men lingering in jails, disproportionately affecting a lot of African American men. They can't earn a living, they can't be fathers to their families. So I am definitely for decriminalizing marijuana. But I have evolved around medical marijuana, and I'm looking at what Seattle and other states are doing just around that. So when I get that opportunity to be in Congress and take a stand, then I will have to go on record officially around these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds like selfish stuff. The next question comes from Mr. Levine, and it will go first to Professor Hager. Have you advocated for or voted to cut any estate tax paid by multi-million-dollar estates? If so, how would you make up the shortfall in revenue? Have you ever called the death tax, as Republicans do? Why? Professor Hager.
Mics are going off and on. But have I advocated or voted for estate tax cuts? No, I haven't ever done that. I haven't been in a position to do it. I've been appointed to several things, so I'm on the Planning Commission in Alexandria. I was appointed to that. I was appointed to the chair of the Housing Authority. I've been appointed by the Obama administration for the Council on Underserved Communities, for the Small Business Administration. But in terms of the estate tax, we shouldn't cut taxes on that. I mean, I understand people earn money throughout their lives. They want to pass it down. But, you know, we should make sure that when it is passed down, that there are taxes paid on that. I know my father-in-law would not agree. I don't think my parents would agree with that. But on estate tax, I mean, we really do need to redistribute money. We have incredible income inequality, but that pales in comparison to the wealth inequality that we have in the U.S. And there are ways that we can work on that. By cutting the estate tax, we are basically proliferating wealth inequality and income inequality, and that is destructive to our democracy. So we need to redistribute money so that we have a functioning democracy, and that it continues to be as strong as it is today, and we continue to be the world leaders in the global economy. But with growing income inequality and wealth inequality, that is jeopardized.
Senator Evans.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I have supported a cut or an elimination of a Virginia estate tax in order to remain competitive and consistent with other states that we compete with. But my policy on taxation has been consistent. I've always supported a federal estate tax. I support a graduated income tax, one that we don't have enough of in Virginia. I support fair corporate taxes. Right now, GE is making $27 billion in profits a year. What are they paying in taxes? Nothing. In fact, they're getting a tax refund. I don't support raising the sales tax as the General Assembly did last year. I oppose lowering the gas tax as the General Assembly did. So I've been consistent on taxation. But I also want to talk about the Ryan budget if we're on the topic. You know, that raises taxes on the middle class, which is wrong, and it cuts taxes on millionaires and billionaires. We need to be doing the opposite. Further, just while I've got a few seconds left, Mayor Ewell asked about regional boards, if anyone had served as he had. Bill, I served with you on the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. I also serve with you currently on the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, and I've served on COGS, Metropolitan Washington Air Quality Committee. So I have been on regional commissions as well as higher up. Thank you.
Mayor Ewell.
No.
No, I have not had the opportunity to advocate and or cut the estate tax, and I would not push for that at all. Certainly, my 83 years of experience dealing with budgets, I know I don't look 83, but I've got that many years of experience because I've been on the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's board for 13 years dealing with the $2 billion annual operating budget. The city's budget, public schools for 10 years dealing with their budgets, nonprofits and so forth. And I have a degree in accounting and business administration, so I have a lot of experience dealing with budgets and in terms of balancing budgets, and that's one of the reasons why I want to go to Congress, because I want to offer my background and my experience as a local legislator, as a mayor, helping to balance the budget and get this country moving in the right direction again in terms of economic development, job creation, all those things that will help us to move this country forward. And I'd like to have the opportunity to do that with the experience that I have. Certainly, we need to make certain that the monies that are leaving this country in terms of offshore needs to stay here in the United States, and that is something that you're a congressman that I will be working on.
Well, yes, I have worked on estate tax over the years, but I have never advocated its complete elimination. And I've never been a lobbyist or advocated in Congress on this. I was part of business associations, party associations, that worked to try to keep the estate tax sensible. And the specific problem we were trying to avoid was when family farms have to sell to pay the tax, or small and medium-sized businesses that are family owned and run have to sell to pay the tax. So what we've always looked for was a reasonable compromise, $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, that allowed the business to stay in the family rather than having to sell it to pay taxes. By the way, I have my children here with me. One of the reasons you work so hard, 6 and 7 days a week, is to leave something for your children. Now, you don't want Downton Abbey, you don't want to leave them crazy amounts of money, but you want to leave them, if you can build a business that they, by the way, they're not interested, but if, they keep them. But if you have it, it'd be nice to be able to leave it to them to do. By the way, I'm sorry to disappoint Patrick too. But I'm proud of the way that we tried to make welfare reform better. In a lot of ways, welfare reform. So we did so many good things. We took the 100% tax on single mothers receiving welfare away. We removed the mandate that a father couldn't live in the home. We allowed both grandparents to live in the home and still receive welfare. And we funded all of it in 95 and 96. And then I lost the race in 97. I didn't get to continue that. I left it to the General Assembly members who followed me to fund it in years to come.
I strongly support the estate tax repeal would be regressive. It certainly is the best way to redistribute wealth. There are so few people that are impacted. I mean, I can't even believe what the debate is even about. These people that get taxed, they're going to be okay. You need to understand that. I mean, what I do support taxes is I think we do need a new American economy. I think we need to start taxing millionaires and billionaires more. They need to pay their fair share. We need to take the revenue from that and start investing more in education, start investing more in building our crumbling roads and bridges and transit and other infrastructure. And we need to raise the minimum wage. There's so many different things that we can do by tinkering our tax code that's going to make the billionaires, they're going to be fine. I don't know why we're defending them. They're going to have it to pass on to their families. They're going to be perfectly okay. While everyone else is struggling, how can we sit up here and say something like that? Jack.
Mark, thank you for your question. I have not had the opportunity to advocate around estate taxes. What I've been advocating for are senior citizens who can't stay in their homes and even pay their personal property taxes. Retraining those senior citizens for jobs because they can't live on Social Security. So I've been advocating for seniors who wish they had a problem about estate taxes. I've been advocating for women who are not getting equal pay, who are getting 77 cents to the dollar on what a man gets. And African American women getting 59 cents and Latino women 56 cents. So they too wish they had a estate tax to deal with. I've been advocating for businesses who want access to capital so that they can grow a business, so that they would have a company to leave to their family and leave to their children. They'd probably gladly pay estate taxes if they could get that business going. I've been advocating for workers who haven't had a raise, federal workers, in 3 years, and who have seen the cost of living in this area just go up. So again, they too would probably gladly pay estate taxes if only they could live where they work. So I have been advocating, but it is about the fairness of taxes that we do. I believe in the Buffett rule, that Buffett's secretary should be paying more percentage-wise than he pays. So in Congress, I will continue to advocate for those people.
The next question comes from Ms. Chapman, and it will go first to Senator Evans. What 3 specific steps would you take to reduce the deficit?
One thing we have to do is raise taxes on millionaires and billionaires, but the deficit is not the first problem that we've got. We've got a problem in this country with people who are not earning enough to get by, a lack of jobs, and a lot of other problems. So the deficit is not going to be my first priority. But I would specifically raise the tax on millionaires and billionaires, make sure that there's fair corporate taxes. Right now, as I said, GE makes an obscene amount of profit. I mean, it's fine to make a profit, but not when you don't pay corporate income tax on it, not when you offshore it. And that's something I'm concerned with. So that's what I would do regarding the deficit. Again, getting back to the Ryan budget, things that work against there are to, the Ryan budget would end Medicare and Social Security. I put my energy into defending those programs. I put my energy into defending Obamacare from its 51st or 52nd or 53rd attempt to eliminate it. I put my energy into not raising taxes on the middle class, not cutting education, infrastructure, and clean energy. Those are things that I would not do to reduce the deficit.
Mayor Ewell.
I would raise the tax on the rich and wealthy, certainly. In terms of creating more jobs, I would push for the funding of the highway transportation bill. That is an opportunity to create more than 700,000 jobs to fix our infrastructure across this country. More than 63,000 of our bridges are at risk of collapse and safety hazards. And infrastructure includes our sewer system, monies for transportation throughout this country to keep the economy moving. Certainly, I would take a review. While I certainly support our Medicare and Social Security programs, but those are areas that should be reviewed and looked at in terms of some opportunities to be restructured. Perhaps some cost savings that would be derived as a result. But certainly, creating jobs, getting people back to work. They're spending their monies and the income that they earn, their disposable income, back into the society, buying houses, sending their kids off to college, and buying